Hey, DM Gallibond here, and welcome to Last Week from the Table for Tuesday, April 21st, 2020. I'm your host, DM Gallibond. Now let's get on with the show. And this show is where we talk about the recaps of the two actual play games that I run every week on my Twitch channel, which you can find at twitch.tv/Gallibond. Now, on Thursday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, we're playing through the Essentials game from 5e. That is the Dragon of Icespire Peak. And this last session, session 16, saw the party finally being at the Circle of Thunder. They saw that there were several of the cultists that were involved in some ritual, and there was storm clouds brewing overhead, and there was the ground was rumbling underneath them. So the party engaged and quickly started fighting the cultists, and when they did, all these little tree monsters called twig blights, they all came out and started attacking the party, but the cleric used spirit guardians and quickly got rid of those in the wide area around her, and then they took down the actual cultists without too much trouble. But as soon as the last cultist died, um, the ground shook violently, and everybody had to make dexterity saves, and a couple of them failed and fell down, didn't take any damage. And then this bolt of lightning came out of the sky and struck the big uh, bonfire structure that was in the middle of this circle of stones, and out of the ground erupted this enormous boar. And this boar had four ugly tusks, and um, there were wisps of lightning off of the tusk. And a couple of the characters did religion checks and realized that this was Gorak the Thunderboar, which is an aspect of Talos, the Storm Lord, that Talos will sometimes send in response to some of his more faithful worshippers. So uh, they were like, "Uh oh." So they had to fight this thing, and of course the thing shoots lightning out of its tusks, and when it hits with its four paws, it deals thunder damage. And so there was a big fight with that, and they finally destroyed it. And as it dissipated, there was this long, low peal of thunder off in the distance, and the storm clouds started to break up and drift away. So apparently, the ritual that the cultists had been up to was related to this uh, thunder boar, but the party managed to stop it. And they looked around, they found themselves a couple of magic items. They found a nice potion, and they found a magic shield, and a little bit of monetary treasure, not a whole lot. And then they started making their way back to Phandalin. But on the way, there was a couple of places they wanted to stop and look. One of them was a hunting lodge, and one of them was a woodland manse. And so, based on where everything was on the map, they decided they would head to the woodland manse first. And we got there just about the end of the session, and they saw there's this big mansion is kind of overgrown and run down a little bit, and there's these big natural pumpkin patches out there, and would you know it, rooting around in these pumpkin patches are a bunch of boars. And these boars didn't look terribly friendly. So but we didn't have time to see a whole lot about what was going on before the session ended. So we'll pick up there on Thursday night for session 17 of the Dragon of Icespire Peak. You can join us then. We usually run about 3 hours, 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. And you can follow us, like I said, on my Twitch channel at twitch.tv/Gallibond. Now let's take a look at the Walker of Waterdeep. Walker of Waterdeep is a 5e homebrew game that crosses the streams of lore between Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition and Magic the Gathering. We play this on my Twitch channel as well on Sundays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern. And in this channel, in this episode, session 46, I believe it was, they were finally given their long awaited uh, briefing on the next destination in their journey. They're on a quest that will take them to multiple planes. They're trying to find materials and trying to recover information that will help them fight a battle back home on Toril. And they've been in Ravnica and had a lot of adventures there in Ravnica. And they're about to go to the home plane of their benefactor, which is Innistrad. So they got a big briefing on Innistrad. And they started by telling them, oh, Innistrad is lovely. You've got a lot of Geist, which are undead spirits there. You've got a lot of werewolves there. You've got a lot of vampires there. Um, then you've got a lot of natural creatures that make even the demons and the werewolves and the vampires nervous. And they were all like, okay, we got to go this place? This doesn't sound like really a great place to go. And one of the materials they need is a really exotic metal that is found only on Innistrad. And they have been led to believe there's some that they might be able to find in an abandoned mine, but they're after about 20, or depending on the side quest that one of the players got or one of the characters got, maybe as much as 25 pounds of this metal. Um, and then they also found out about another potential source for this, which is a brother and sister pair of necromancers that have created an infernal machine called the Soul Separator. What that does is that will turn living beings into zombies without doing the decency of actually killing them first. It just literally rips their soul out of their living body. And so this soul separator machine is made with some of this exotic metal. And, one option the party has is try to find this, try to maybe beat up these necromancers and destroy this machine and then take the metal. Um, Now, I gave them that as an option because the characters really want to do that, but we'll just have to see when they start realizing how tough things are, whether they think that's a feasible thing for them to do at their level. When they finish up everything on Ravnica and they actually get ready to use the circle of teleportation to go to Innistrad, they will be rising from 6th to 7th level. And so, you know, we'll have to see how they deal with all of the challenges that they have there. Now, I mentioned that there's some side quests. Several of the characters that are in Ravnica, or several of the PCs, now that they're in Ravnica, they have actually joined up with some of the guilds. The Barbarian has joined up with the Gruul clans because, oddly enough, in the party's thinking, the Gruul probably have the closest to the sane view of the world. Um, all of the other guilds are their own versions of batshit crazy as far as the party is concerned. Uh, all very, very concerned about their special interests. Now, the Warforged has decided to join the Izzet League partly because they deal with all kinds of mechanisms that might be upgrades for him down the road, but also because they're kind of the more pure researcher and uninhibited by trying to focus their research on wanting a predetermined outcome. It's more like, oh, hey, what happens if we mix this with this? See what happens. So the Warforged really likes that, even though the Warforged is a cleric of Moradin, but he still is that kind of creative type of person. So he's dealing with them. The Barbarian is a half orc um, dragonborn. Yes, that's a thing in my homebrew world, a half orc dragonborn. And so he actually wanted an audience and received an audience with the guildmaster of the Izzet League, this ancient 15,000-year-old dragon, because he just had some of his draconic abilities manifested themselves fairly recently, and so he kind of wanted some insights on what that was all about, and figured, hey, there's this big ancient dragon here who's really super powerful. Uh, Maybe he can tell me some things. So it was kind of fun for him to have a conversation there with him. And then we have our monk who likes to think of himself as a master of subterfuge, master of secrets. He likes skulking around in the shadows. So, of course, he was drawn to House Demir. And then he thought, wow, a really cool thing about House Demir is that you always have another identity in another guild. And then he was thinking about, okay, which of these guilds probably deserves to be watched the most? Which one potentially is the most dangerous? And after realizing that they were aligned with a demon lord, he decided probably the cult of Rakdos would be the one that he would join as his basically cover within House Demir. And he's naturally a rather charismatic PC, and he takes the stage very well. So somebody recommended him when he joined Rakdos to be to take part in one of the exotic performances that they do. Now, for anybody who hasn't read the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, straight out of that guide, they talk about how Ravnica or how Rakdos does basically two kinds of performances. There are the street performances that they do that are public, out in the public squares at night, attract big crowds, and they have acrobats and they have jugglers and fire eaters and they do puppet shows and plays that are funny or whatnot and everything. Then they have their exotic shows. These are done for private audiences, out of sight, uh, not very well publicized, usually very exclusive audiences with really discriminating or just maybe whacked out tastes. Um, and it says that they engage in everything from um, live uh, live sex acts to actually ritualized murder that is part of the performance. And so the monk got invited to be part of one of these shows. And not just to be part of one, but to be the performer who actually in Act 5 was supposed to plunge a real dagger into the heart of the star of the show. because it was that kind of performance for an extremely wealthy um, set of Orzhov Syndicate uh, audience members that basically had asked them to perform this play. And the weird thing about it is that the performer who's supposed to be slain actually wants to be sacrificed to the glory of Rakdos because they really are just dedicated, that much dedicated to this demon that they're that they belong to. So it was a great deal of fun for the rest of the party members to sort of have this be gradually explained to the monk by his Rakdos contacts. And you could just sort of hear in the monk's voice, wait a minute, what? And then all of the other players were just laughing and everything, having a good time. So uh, we he is uh, he went through the rehearsal and he had to make some performance checks and he botched a couple and didn't botch them on purpose because we were using the digital dice, but the digital dice botched a couple of performance checks for him. And so he's now been swapped out to be the understudy for the role and not the actual uh, performer that will be performing in the play. But he's expected to be there um, at the play. And so we'll have to see how that goes. But that will be in our next session. And also in our next session, they will finish up doing their shopping to get ready for their trip to Innistrad. And yeah, um, we'll see how that goes. Yeah, this is a this is a game. This Walker of Waterdeep game is one where the players have really um, embraced the role playing and they really have developed a good camaraderie and a good chemistry with each other. And they like to just see where their characters will go and what their characters will do. And so there are times I kind of push the envelope of things that normally I wouldn't do with other games, but they pretty much are into running with this, and they have a trust with each other, so that they know they're not going to cross lines that are really uncomfortable for the other players, and they always know that they have, you know. Background chat that they can send to me and say, hey, maybe we should do something a little bit different. And but we talk about stuff out of the game too, of what the characters might want to do and what they might be prepared to do in situations that might arise in the game. So yeah, nobody was going into this uh, completely unaware of just how depraved and just how messed up the cult of Rakdos could be. But still, I don't think they were quite expecting right out of the gate that one of their party members was going to be invited to take that kind of a role in a performance, basically as his initiation into the cult. So it'll be fun to see how that all happens. All right, and like I said, that Walker of Waterdeep game happens Sundays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time on my Twitch channel. You guys can tune in for that and see how that goes. All right, everyone, I have been DM Gallibond, and this has been Tales from the Table for Tuesday, the 21st of April, 2020. And just remember, every time you are playing around your D&D table, try to make your game memorable so you have tales from your table that you can share as well. All right, good night, everybody.